Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of Christopher Gregor. Christopher Gregor is currently on trial for the murder of his 6-year-old son, Corey. It's reported that Mr. Gregor stated that his son was, quote, too fat and forced him to run on a treadmill, which resulted in injuries, which ultimately resulted in his death, allegedly. The defense is stating that the cause of Corey's death was not related to injuries sustained on the treadmill. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to remind you, this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, the goal of this is not to prove innocence nor guilt. There is currently a jury doing that. I'm just providing commentary based on his behavior and his body language. Last thing before we get started is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. What we're going to be looking at today is Christopher Gregor's reaction in court while having to watch the treadmill video. I'm going to be providing commentary based on his body language in court as well as in the video. Let's just jump right in. Now you're subtly noticing him pursing his lips like this. Now the lips are very sensitive. They help us feel a lot calmer. So we do a lot of things around the mouth when we're starting to feel stressed. As he's watching this video, he saw himself get up, and at that point, he started bunching his lips. So I think that his reaction to that is that he's starting to feel stressed. He knows what's coming. So he knows this is not a good look. So we're starting to see a little bit of stress on his face. At the same time, I want you to notice how intense his gaze is. He is not averting his eyes from what's going on at all. Now you're noticing his mouth bunch up more and more. You're going to keep noticing this throughout. But what I want you to also pay attention to is the lack of other emotions. I can't imagine seeing your son on one of the last days he was alive and not having any sort of emotional reaction to that. Now that doesn't prove innocence or guilt. We're allowed to function however we do emotionally, but it's just something that's worth pointing out is that he really has no reaction to seeing his son during one of his last days. It's just really tragic. Now, if you look at his body position as he's working out, as he's walking around, you can see he's got his arms really far out. And we do that to feel dominant. A lot of people probably do this when they work out because it makes them feel big. It makes them feel tough at those times. And that's what he seems to be feeling right now while he's working out. Got his arms spread out really far, taking up more physical space. We do that as a sign of dominance. We try to take up physical space. And you can very much see him doing that right now. So you're getting some idea of his head space while he's exercising. And I've watched the entire video, so just to be clear, it lasts about 10 minutes. We're going to be watching clips from it today, but the amount of time that Corey was running was around 10 minutes, just to give you some frame of reference if you haven't seen this already. Now, what's also interesting is if you look at his eyes and if you look at where he's looking while he's in court. Now, this is my best guess because obviously we can't line this up perfectly, but if you watch his eyes moving, sometimes he'll look up, sometimes he looks down. Presumably he's looking at himself and then looking at Corey, but he's spending 95% of the time watching himself in this video, which I find fascinating. Now, you saw him look down just now. Now, he was watching himself, and he can see that he's preparing to start walking over towards Corey. And at that point, he looks down. And that's when we start to lose confidence because, like I said, he knows what's coming. He knows the behaviors he engaged in on this day. And so there does seem to be a lack of confidence as he sees that. There's that same posture as he walks up to Corey. You notice the arms out. As he's walking towards Corey, he's feeling intimidating. He's feeling powerful at that time. And so invading Corey's space a little bit, walking towards him. And just because you're in somebody's space doesn't mean you're invading it, but he is invading it in that sense. He is doing it in a threatening way. It's not like he's walking over to see how he's doing. It's not like he's walking over there in a supportive way. He's walking there in an intimidating way. So as he circles around, as he starts to go towards Corey, it is a way to try to, from his mind, I presume, to intimidate. As you saw him walk around, the frustration or anger is building in him right now. Obviously, there's no legitimate frustration at Corey. It doesn't make any sense that he would have any negative feelings towards this child. However, when people are pathological in this way, they see somebody vulnerable and they want to hurt them. And so you can see it building in him. Watch this right here before he goes up to lean in on it. As you can see, he was shaking his head while looking down, almost denying the reality of what's happening. Once again, losing confidence. Whenever the head starts to point down, that's going to be a loss of confidence on his end. He keeps shaking his head no. And now it seems that he's turning up the speed. I presume that's what he's doing. See, once again, shaking his head no as he engages in this behavior. Almost in denial, because anybody that's watching this can see exactly what's going on. It's as plain as anything. So being stuck like that, it's forcing him to shake his head no because he is so frustrated. He's powerless in this situation. And if there's somebody, I want you to think about this, somebody that would behave this way towards a child, towards a 6-year-old, how much power does this person crave? So think about how out of power they are when they're sitting in a courtroom. Imagine what it must feel like to crave power so desperately that you would treat a 6-year-old this way and then have it where you have no control. Everybody's watching you. Everybody's watching you react. He has no choice but to shake his head no because he wants to deny the reality of where he's sitting right now. Staying in his space, staying in his physical space, getting in his face. It's all meant to intimidate, and it is intimidating. When you're a child, you oftentimes accept the situation you're in. Whether you like it or not, you just go, well, this is just what things are. And at this point, having somebody in your face, having somebody intimidate you, it seems that he has no choice but to try to just continue on and continue to do what his father is saying and insisting upon right now. Think about how scary this must be for this child. Obviously, this is not a behavior that's in isolation. That's one thing that we know about human behavior. Things are very, very, very rarely just a one and done. Things are very rarely going to happen once and have never happened before or never happen again. So I presume that Corey knows that if he looks at his father or does anything wrong or whatever it is, that there's going to be a price to pay. So for him leaning forward like this, somebody like Christopher Gregor right here is feeling powerful. It's exciting to him to feel this degree of power, to know that Corey is doing what he wants, that he is running on the treadmill, that he's doing what he's being commanded to do, in essence, gives Christopher a great sense of power. And you can see the ease at which he leans forward. You can see the way he tries to casually lean forward, but is also invading his space. And you can see the hands on the hips right here. Once again, that takes up more space. You think about it. Think about sometimes police officers stand like this because they want to make sure that they're dominant in certain situations. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. He feels so dominant. He can't help but stand this way. And he's continuing to shake his head no. Now, he may be doing that because he thinks people are watching, and he's doing it intentionally. To me, it looks involuntary. To me, it looks like he's in denial rather than him shaking his head no because he wants to show that he's remorseful or something, because it wouldn't show that anyway. But as he continues to stand there with his hands on his hips, being dominating, that's the only thing he wants. He wants absolute and utter control and power in this situation. I just want to warn you, this video is about to get much more difficult to watch. Now look at the type of aggression he's using to pick the child up. As Corey fell over, he made room for him to fall over so he could do this, so that he could feel powerful. Watch this part again right here, because he actually makes way for him to fall over. See, he sees that he's preparing to fall over, and he wants so badly to show his dominance, he allows him to fall over. And then you could see he also tried to pick him up underneath his arms. Maybe he realized he wasn't strong enough to do it and comfortably that way. And then so he grabs him by the shirt because he wants to use as much anger as possible. And this is so commonly what we see from abusers, trying to find vulnerable people that can make themselves feel tough, make themselves feel big. Now this, and I find this disturbing beyond any words that I have to describe it, it appears that he's biting him on the head right here. And maybe he's putting his mouth in his head, but or biting at it, but it looks like he's literally putting his teeth on his head at this moment because he's got so much fury right now, and the only place he knows where to put it apparently is Corey. It's one of the more disturbing things that I've seen in a while. Can you imagine what it would be like to have somebody bite you on the head because they're so angry when you're doing exactly what they're telling you to do? I've rarely seen anything this horrific. But we're going to go back for a second, and we're going to watch more of his reaction as this is going on. Now, what we're not seeing is shame. Sometimes when people look down, there can be an aspect of shame to it. What we've seen so far seems to be a lack of confidence. But as the abuse is occurring, he's not looking away at all. He's not feeling shameful about this. He's not looking away. He's not having any reaction to it. He's watching it unfold in real time, and it doesn't seem to be affecting him a whole lot right now. He looked away very briefly after biting his son on the head, but beyond that, he seems to be watching it very intensely. Now he is starting to look away more because this is ramping up, and this truly is where the injuries are believed to be sustained. So there is more of a lack of confidence building, but it doesn't seem to be that he's bothered by what he's seeing. And you can see his body position during the video in the gym. Hand on his hip, arm out, trying to take up as much space as possible to remind Corey, I am in control here. Everything he's doing, every body position you're seeing, all the gestures, all of it is just to make sure that Corey knows that he's in absolute control. That's his goal right now because that's how he's feeling. He's feeling dominant. This must be very exciting for him. And he's getting exactly what he wants right now. We're still seeing the head shakes. We're still seeing the denial of the reality of what's going on right now. And as he walks off, we're seeing that dominant posture again, keeping his arms out, feeling tough on the inside, thinking about how awesome he is probably. And the irony of situations like this is that the most average people seem to be more obsessed with everybody else's weight than their own. Not that I'm criticizing his, I could care less how much he weighs, but it's interesting that he seems to be accusing his son, who looks like he's a very normal size, of being too fat, when he also looks like he's a very average size himself. But this is oftentimes what we see. These are the ways that they control others. We'll go ahead and stop here. What we're seeing today is somebody who's able to sit and watch himself abuse his son and doesn't show much from it, shaking his head, probably denying reality. Certainly doesn't seem to show any sadness or remorse. And whether or not the defense believes that this is what ultimately resulted in the child's death, what we're seeing here is clearly him being abusive. And we're also seeing what seems to be a very, very minimal reaction to that, if any reaction at all, really emotionally. We certainly aren't seeing any sadness or regret. And I really do want you to consider, what would it be like to see one of the final videos of your son and to have no reaction to that? That to me speaks volumes. Hopefully this has been helpful in you better understanding some of the behavior and body language we saw while he watched this. There's a lot more footage of him, so I can analyze that from other days of the trial if there are other parts that you would like me to. And if you have any other suggestions, please let me know about those as well. Last thing before we get finished up is that I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.